This meeting's being recorded. Um, okay, question. What did you do last Ramadan that you feel like, inshallah, like when you can start fasting again? Or even what are things that you did that you can implement without having to fast?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to think about. I think last Ramadan, for me, I think there were just a lot of things happening in my life where I really knew exactly what I wanted to ask from Allah. And so I would get it for tahajjud and I would have that like personal connection. And I had that kind of spirit of Ramadan to where I wasn't tired, like I wasn't hungry. I would stay up and do like tarawih like at home. And then I would stay up until Fajr and like have long conversations with my mom and like we would talk about different things. We would pray Qiyam together, read Quran together, all of those things. And like it was just, I don't know, it's just I guess that era in my life where I felt like I knew what I wanted my Ramadan to be and what I wanted to focus on asking from Allah and also like thanking him and speaking to him constantly about. And so now it's kind of like I guess my life is more busy, so
Mhm.
it's having to figure out how to fit Ramadan into my life, whereas last year I was able to shape my life around Ramadan. And so I guess that's the difference, like having less time and and energy, like because of all the things that I'm having to do. I don't have as much energy to just be staying up or like waking up early. And also like I'm on my period, like I'm not waking up, I'm not praying Tarawih, I'm not waking up for tahajjud, preparing suhoor, like all of those things. But I hope that, once I do start praying, that I can get into that routine and increase that connection. So,
Thank you so much for sharing that. I actually was speaking to someone who was kind of saying the same thing about how this year her schedule is just a lot more busier. So she and like last year she was a student, so she felt like she had a lot more time to be able to dedicate to worship. And to
mhm,
that, I'll say that everything you do every single day can be an act of worship to Allah. It just depends on how you frame that in your mind. Literally going to school, going to work, um, taking care of your body, feeding your body, resting your soul, like all of those things are acts of worship. It just depends on how you view it. And I think that also it goes with the whole perfectionism thing where you think that you need to like read 20 pages of Quran, you need to wake up for tahajjud every single day, but that isn't what Islam is. It's about striving, and also that changes with every season of your life. Like sometimes you'll have more time to do those things. You'll have more time to pick up an Islamic book, and sometimes you won't. Sometimes, for instance, a goal of mine is reading Quran, and some days I will read like 10 pages. Some days I'll read one page. Some days I only have had energy to like read one verse, but that's still beautiful and that's still meaningful and that's still Ramadan. It's just about your perspective, and it's also about you not being so hard on yourself because you're not in the same season of life. And I also think that's like the most beautiful part, and it's a great way to show your love to Allah by being able to be in different seasons of life and still know in your heart that everything you're doing is for the sake of Allah. And ultimately, that's what Ramadan is for. It's to create that connection. So, yeah, don't let that dishearten you because a lot of people are in the same shoes. It's all about perspective. Um,
sure.
the next person I'm going to call on is Fizza S.
Hey,
Hey, Fizza S.
hey,
Hey, hey, how y'all doing?
so one thing this Ramadan that I am like working on is more being more isolated with myself. I feel like this year I'm trying to have that mindset where like what if this is your last Ramadan? And I feel like um it's really changed my perspective on that. Yeah, yeah, little finger snapping fingers right now. But yeah, I think that's one thing that I really want to keep in mind this Ramadan. And yeah.
Period. Okay. The next person is Amna Ali Halal.
I think she says she's in the restroom.
Okay, never mind. Um, Amna Yassin.
Sure, yeah. So I think one thing working well. So I think every day so far I've tried to like remember like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some form or fashion because I actually did get my period. Like I think I'm trying to remember it was like Monday. So it was like majority, right? Like is kind of like on my period, but like regardless of that, like I think I've done a good job of like doing something like for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like just like putting Quran in my ear, listening to like a podcast of some sort, Islamic podcast. Like I read like, the book. Um so I think like in terms of like actually like still like continuing those acts of worship, like I've been doing well on that. In terms of like what has not been going well, I feel like this is not necessarily in my control, but like for work, like the way my job is like first week and last week of the month are pretty hectic. So I think like that was something that was more so out of my control, but definitely have felt like kind of more like tired like this week, even though like I haven't been fasting. But yeah, I think like that, like unfortunately, I wish I had more time like this week, but like I couldn't because of like work. So that was like kind of didn't go well.
Oh, well, I love that we have blood sisters in here because um and also like Allahumma barik, you should really be proud of yourself for saying that you did something well because I think that it's so hard to acknowledge that, especially when you're on your period. And remembrance and dhikr in any form or shape, like it's not just salah, but like you said, reading a book or listening to a podcast, that being intentional is worship and it's you trying to make the most of Ramadan. So that's something that you should be so proud of. And I'm supposed to start soon. So I'm going to keep that in mind and try to do the same thing. And then I'm supposed to start soon. So I'm going to keep that in mind and try to do the same thing. And then is it Anam?
Yeah, it's
Okay. Assalamu
always
alaikum.
just felt a little different. Walaikum assalam. I think one of the things that's going well is definitely reading more Quran. I've been trying to, I think, build up my speed and how like much I feel up to reading every day. And so that's been going pretty well. One of the things that I've been working on is, I guess, making dua because a lot of the times my mind is just blank. And so that's one of the things I'm definitely trying to work on. But it's
Oh,
also been tough with school stuff too because um, I'm graduating and my degree has a big exam this week. And
mhm.
so I was able to only do like partially some of the stuff we were looking forward to for this like club meeting, but definitely was able to look into the book, highlight quotes. So that was by bare minimum.
No, I'm so glad you actually told me that because I never want that to be any sort of factor for people to not attend because like I said some days we'll have that energy to read like two lines and other days like you'll want to probably get ahead of reading and read more. So that's completely fine and inshallah may Allah grant you success. And your exam, did you say you have?
Yeah, it's like the exam that determines if you get your degree or not. So it's kind of been a lot of I've been doing a lot for Ramadan, but then I haven't been studying that much, so it's kind of been a little tricky balance situation.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. That was one of the biggest things that I've been struggling with and navigating my way through as well. But alhamdulillah, we're in the month of dua. So just just do your best and also just I would say just make the most amount of dua that you can. This is like very extreme, but I've literally I've been like waking up like at 4 to try and like get stuff done or like study a little bit. So like also just kind of knowing when you have the most energy and when you don't and working your schedule around that has usually helped me. Um and then Amna Ali, are you here? Are you still in
Yeah,
the
yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, okay, one thing that I feel like I have been doing a lot more consistently because of Ramadan. And I will give credits to Ramadan for it, but praying on time, praying off a lot, five salah, then reading Quran. Because honestly, before Ramadan, I felt like I was in a place where I just really needed this to come. And my situation's kind of the opposite from everyone else. I know they like just got their periods and stuff, but for me, I had it like before Ramadan started, so I was still going to the masjid. But the thing is, like not being able to pray, I feel like I was doing a lot more socializing, and then I just felt like I was I don't know, I felt like I was not there for the right reasons, and then that was kind of setting me back. So then when I was able to fast and pray, it really did um, make me feel more at peace. And I honestly, I haven't felt like more at peace with myself than these last, what, 3 days that I've been fasting and praying. So
Amna Ali Halal, you're gonna make me cry.
save your tears, Mariam. It's okay.
That is, I love that answer. And I have nothing to say to that because we've talked about it already. But if anyone else has any comments, please let Amna Ali Halal know. And the next and last person is Misbah Badat.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. One thing I've been trying to do more consistently this Ramadan is prioritize like myself and what I know is going to be beneficial for me. Last year, I would go to the masjid for Tarawih all the time, but I realized that it was really hard for me to focus sometimes, especially because I'm someone that doesn't like a lot of crowds. Yesterday at Marium Masjid, like the crowd really tried to eat me, so I got really scared. So this year I really tried to prioritize staying at home like on the weekdays because I work 9 to 5 like for most weekdays. So on like weekends I like to go out, but during the week I like to just stay home and pray Tarawih at home. I feel like it makes me feel a lot more connected. And I've also been trying to read a lot more Quran. Feel like I really want to be consistent this Ramadan, inshallah. I don't like set unrealistic goals, but inshallah, like I do want to like at least get through most of it. So I really want to be consistent with that. And one thing I've been struggling with is just being really abnormally tired. I feel like I could sleep all day if I wanted to. So I really just don't know how to deal with that right now. I don't know if it's because I'm like working a lot this year, but I've just been really tired and I feel like that really interferes with my day no matter how much sleep I get. I'm like exhausted. So inshallah, I just want to work on that. Maybe try to like find a balance.
Wow, Misbah, you really ate with that response. Okay, now we'll get to the PowerPoint presentation. I'm so excited. So welcome to Book Club by Deen Circle. So, why are we doing a book club? We are doing a book club to gain Islamic knowledge and inspiration, to foster conversations, discussions, and community, and then to gain closeness to Allah. I think that we underestimate the power of a good book and what it can do for you. I have personally felt like my perspective change, my iman change with simple quotes in a book, and it can be so powerful, yet somehow we kind of put less significance to it when it comes to different acts of worships or things we can do to get closer to Islam. And it's also such an incredible way to just gain knowledge. And I personally feel like it's a little slept on because um, I feel like as a student, or we spend so much of our lives behind textbooks and um, just academia that we kind of get burnt out from the concept of reading for fun or um, like reading knowledgeable things or even nonfiction because it just feels like such a chore. But I've recently really realized the significance and blessings of having the number one, like the ability to read, like to comprehend words. And also the blessing of having books to read and having a way to incorporate a lot in my free time um and the time I use to decompress. So inshallah we can use this section of Deen Circle as a way to gain that and um, really inspire ourselves and make reading a part of our routine. Again, not in a perfectionist way, but just as much as we can. Deen Circle is about fostering conversation, discussions, and community. But I think that when it comes to reading, it has like an even more intimate feel to it simply because everyone's reading the exact same story, the same words, and it can bring about so many different thoughts and feelings. And it's so dynamic and interesting. And conversations about Allah is just the most beautiful form of community, and that's what Deen Circle ins- or aspires to bring for everyone. So inshallah, we can do that, and then also just ultimately gain closeness to Allah. All of these things, the gaining knowledge, the having conversations, making friendships, and all of the above is all so that we can have a relationship with Allah. And to know Allah is to know this deen and the stories of his messengers and the people that communicated Islam and the ins and outs of it. So yeah. Oh, before I get into that, I am gonna quickly introduce the people kind of in charge of book club. It's gonna be me. My name is Marium for those of you guys who don't know me. And my co book clubber is this is where you unmute yourself and then you say Miss Babuda.
Hey guys, Mariam asked me to co-host book club with her because she was mad that I read more books than her in the month of January. So when she asked me, I was obviously like, yes, we have to do this. And I'm really excited because, like Mariam said, I feel like reading is such like a slept-on way to gain knowledge, especially in the month of Ramadan. I know that like a lot of people like to listen to lectures and stuff, but for someone who enjoys like a really good book, reading this book has been such a nice way to like, spend time after iftar and before tarawih. It's so nice to like learn more about like the amazing women in our religion. So I'm really excited for everyone to be a part of this, and I'm just really excited to like go through this with you guys.
Yeah, and also we have a third book club host, Ifra, but she's fake and she's at a different organization right now. So she can't introduce herself, but if you see messages from her in the group chat, she's also one of the organizers. And before I continue, I just want to say that I in fact did read more books than Misbah in February, so just disregard everything she said and we will continue with the presentation.
But just know that she
Um,
only read more books because I was sick all of February. So just guys remember
just
that.
just know that lying is bad during Ramadan, and so that we should continue with the presentation. So our schedule, we're gonna have two tests over each chapter every Monday. And we're also gonna have five quizzes over each chapter. And it's gonna be due Wednesday. Um, and depending on how well you perform on these tests and quizzes will dictate your role within the circle, as in like whether you get to continue being in the circle or not. Um, psych, psych, guys. There's no tests or quizzes. Um, I just said lying is bad during Ramadan, so I just wanted to show that. Okay, so this is our actual schedule. Inshallah, we're gonna have meetings every Saturday at 3 p.m. I know that today was a little, well, not a rough start, but like we're gonna give you guys like a 5 minute leeway, inshallah, and then begin from there. And then we're planning on reading 28 pages each week. So this will inshallah allow us to finish the book by the end of Ramadan. But that being said, I completely understand if you're unable to like reach the goal, or honestly if you want to read more than 28 pages, you're completely um allowed to do so. But this is just a general goal for all of us to kind of reach, so that way we can complete the book after Ramadan. And then also for our Quran goals, there's no specific numerical goal. So I'm not going to tell you to read a certain number of juz or certain number of verses. It's completely up to you and it's personal to you and how much you can handle every single day. Like I said, I've had days where I've reached my goals and then other days where I've only had that energy to read like a few pages of Quran. So it's as much and as little as you're able to do with your day. Just make sure that as you're reading it, it's with translation, which you can access through Quran.com, and that you're taking notes of things that stood out to you, things that matter to you, ayahs that you want to talk about. Um, and yeah, so that's for the most part kind of what our schedule is going to look like. And then also keep in mind, I know I sound like a broken record, but progress over perfection. And this is something that I want to ask you guys to instill, not just with this book club, but with every aspect of this theme. It is so important to understand that you are not defined by completing a goal completely, but you're defined by the measure of trying every single day. Allah has never asked you for perfection. He's asked you to strive for Him in every aspect of this theme. And things can become very destructive and toxic and also lead to a spiritual burnout if you're so caught up in doing things perfectly to the best measure. We are created human beings and not angels for a reason. So, keeping that in mind, know that you're going to have different moods every day. You're going to feel different every day. You also have a life in the aspect of this dunya, for instance, having work and school and all these other things. So just make sure that as long as you're improving 1% or trying one thing every single day in whatever way that looks, that's all that we're asking for, and that's all that Allah is asking for from you. Throughout your reading, please take notes over your thoughts, things that stood out to you, quotes, facts you want to retain, any questions you have for us or just in general. And then also keep in mind that we will be recording our meetings. So I should have prefaced before that if you wear hijab, to try and wear hijab, or you're welcome to keep your camera off. But I do highly recommend keeping your camera on just because it allows everyone in the group to be able to put a face to a voice, which makes the experience a lot more personal and interactive. And if you are unable to make any meeting, so like for instance, if you can't make it to next week's meeting, we will be posting the recordings inshallah on our YouTube. So um just keep on the lookout for that in case you're ever not able to make it for a meeting. Also, answer polls in group chats, please. So this just helps us understand how many people are able to make it, how many people aren't. And it also just helps us organize and plan for the meeting a lot better. And then also, keeping your camera on, again, completely understand like I'm not wanting to be recorded, or like if you're just chilling in bed, but it helps the experience. And also for me personally, when like I feel like it makes me a lot more alert and in tune with my environment. Like personally, just from like classes I've taken, it's like going in person versus being online. Like when you're there showing your face and showing up for that, it just makes you a lot more alert and responsible for being there and for the content that we're going over. So, we are reading Builders of a Nation by Dr. Haifaa Younis. But yeah, she is just a beautiful person, a great speaker. And I personally wanted to choose this book because it goes over the women in Islam. And I feel like that is a factor or an aspect of Islam that I don't have as much information on as I would like to, as much as I do the messengers in Islam or other aspects of Islam. And I think as women, especially, it's so important to know our heroes and know our inspirations because the lives they've lived are great things that we can fall back to when we face issues in our life or when we want inspiration for how we want to live our life and also who we want to be as people. There is so much to learn from these stories. I am currently taking a class, and one of the topics we did go over were the women in Islam. And the stuff I learned was stuff I wish I knew so much earlier because it would have made me so much more confident in my life and my decisions and also the person I want to be. And you'll kind of understand that as we continue. But just a preface of why I chose this author and this specific book. So, a summary of Khadija radiallahu anha. I have a few of her quotes that describe specifically her character to just go over really quick. And also for you guys, you can always just take notes over this. I'm gonna post this PowerPoint on the group chat, so you can always just reference this later. But it's a great like way to kind of distinguish the different women we've talked about. So if you guys want to take notes on this, um, please feel free to. And I also highly encourage it just because listening is one thing, but retaining means to like write and also review. So that would help if you're trying to actually retain this information. But um, the first quote that I have is her physical appearance largely remains unknown. I thought that that was so cool to read because she is subhanallah, and I'm sure for those of you who did get to finish the chapter, like you can pick up on how much she meant to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also how pivotal of her role was in Islam and the becoming of Islam. And to think that this person is one of the most important inspirations for us and like such a important figure for us to look up to, yet we don't even know what she looks like, was so beautiful to me because I feel like in our current society and current generation, a lot of emphasis and I guess like recognition does go to how someone looks on the outside. There's a lot of focus on that, and myself included. I'm not just saying other people, but myself included. I think that a lot of us can become, as especially as women, can become very, I guess, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Consumed almost, or we prioritize that a lot more than who we are on the inside because of how other people perceive us and because of the emphasis that the people surrounding us put on looking good. And so I just thought that was so beautiful that someone can be so important and incredible without their physical appearance having anything to really do with that. She was called the Princess of the Quraysh. The Quraysh is a tribe For those of you guys who do not know, she was called the Pure One. She was well educated, literate, and was considered the most elegant woman of Mecca. Allahumma barik. And that in itself was what I meant when I said reading this book gave me so much more confidence in my own decisions and the things I prioritize in life, because knowing the gender roles culturally and seeing what Islamically Khadija radiallahu anha set the precedent for was just so inspiring and empowering to read, that you can be a strong Muslim woman and be educated and literate and pursue intelligence and knowledge and information, and that doesn't take anything away from the type of Muslim you are. If anything, that just makes you even more admirable. Another thing is she was extremely wealthy. She was a woman of high character. She was actually taking part in business, and she was a businesswoman, which is really crazy to think about. She was, after all, the first wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the first to accept Islam, and she offered um unwavering support and strength. Sorry guys, typo. I was going to say unwavering and I was like, that does not seem right. Unwavering support and strength to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we have Sauda radiallahu, and she said, or not she said, sorry, the author says her unique qualities of contentment and affection helped bring a sense of peace to the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was also a very content person, staying positive and happy with what Allah gave her. Rather than dwelling on what she thought she might lack in comparison to others, she focused on utilizing her unique attributes to leave a lasting legacy. I especially loved these two quotes because it's just something that we can all relate to in terms of contentment and staying positive and happy, especially in a life where it's so easy to complain and be negative about everything. Just hearing or reading that and knowing that characteristic is something that's defining for her and something that was valued by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and was also uh, a building block for what makes her so special. Just was so amazing to read because it just made me want to work on that within myself. And then also just comparison. I think that's a very normal thing for everyone, but especially like women too, could be in any factor. And just seeing something that like we feel is so stupid, like, and knowing that someone so incredible also was tested with the same issue yet decided to work with it in this way is also so inspiring to read. And then some more stuff about her was that she was devoted to her worship. She had a generous spirit and admirable dedication to charity, sadaqah. She was always looking out for those in need. Women who filled the home of the Prophet. She was a woman who filled the home of the Prophet with laughter and joy, which I thought was very interesting because of the words laughter and joy. Again, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like oftentimes it feels as if, like, if you're devoted to worship, then you're not allowed to have a sense of humor or to have those qualities, almost, especially as a girl, because it just, I don't know. I think it's just a societal thing. It just makes you feel some sort of way, or at least it has for me. So just hearing that she had a personality was really cool because it made me want to be I'm not going to finish my sentence. But yeah, and I also just love seeing that she was always looking out for those in need, and she was dedicated to sadaqah. Another very, very, very important woman is um, Aisha radiallahu anha. Some quotes about her were her aspiration soared beyond the world, and her ambitious nature was focused on divinity and eternal reward. She was extremely observant and was known for her intelligence, articulation, and impeccable memory. She also had deep knowledge of poetry, dentistry, and medicine. Guys, I want to be her. Like, what? The fact that she was known for her intelligence, articulation, and impeccable memory, that is, I just, that's literally everything that I could possibly want to be. And also just seeing that she had knowledge of poetry, dentistry, and medicine, again, these women are so dynamic, subhanAllah, and have so much to them that we don't even know about. And it just shows us how much we can be and how much we can amount to. Um, and yeah, I really needed to read that. Another quote is her habit of asking questions. She was quite inquisitive by nature, and this contributed to the vast knowledge she gathered and imparted among the future generations. She would give in charity everything that came her way without keeping only of it for herself. Her desire to please Allah was far greater than love for the material of this world. Another quote is her selflessness and empathy for others outweighed her own needs. Okay. Before I move on, does anybody want to share any thoughts or anything?
I actually do have something to share. But
Yes.
what I just wanted to say is that something that stuck out to me was that Aisha radiallahu anha, they make a point to say that she had a lot of ambition. And I feel like in this day and age, a lot of people think that women shouldn't have ambition or think that women, shouldn't want to go out and get an education or be a part of like society. A lot of people just believe that like women should still stay at home, which obviously I think is a crazy idea, but I just want to emphasize the fact that like it's never ever a bad thing to have ambition. If anything, I think it's encouraged, especially in Islam. And we see that with like the beloved woman that we are reading about today. So I just think that it's such an important thing to remember that you have the choice to be ambitious. You can do literally whatever you want to. It doesn't matter if you do want to stay at home. It doesn't matter if you want to go out and get your degree, get a million degrees if you wanted to. I just think it's so important that we remember that and just know that we have the choice to do whatever we want and nobody should be able to like stop us from doing that.
Period.
I wanted to
Does
share.
anybody? Oh, yes.
As I was reading, I love the point that you're focusing on, like, how different characteristics that are described in the book kind of show us, like, as women, how diverse we can be and how we don't have to fit into this like mold. And I was also looking at it as a aspect of like them as wives, and like the not only the way that their personalities and their characteristics like contributed to a healthy household, but like society in general. And like the book kept mentioning like that these characteristics are what helped them like build a nation, literally, and like an ummah. And so like with Khadija, about how she would always be supportive of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and like even when he wasn't sure of his own like safety, she would always reassure him and reassure his faith in Allah, and like that Allah has a plan for him, and that that he was chosen. And yeah, just kind of like being that person, not only for like other people, like that's so like such a feminine trait, to be supportive and caring of others, and like just keeping someone faithful of Allah. And also how Sauda,
Mhm.
how she, you know, like like you mentioned, filled the house with laughter, and she was always generous and looking out for the needy, and like all of these characteristics are what are needed in a society to build a nation. Like you need people who are always going to be selfless and looking out for those who can't look out for themselves, and you need people to bring like laughter, and you need people to like Khadija, who are supportive, and like you mentioned also Aisha, like she was ambitious, she was always asking questions, and she had knowledge, and she was able to contribute in this way. So like all of these women have like different characteristics that you can like not one, like because there were so many women, are different characteristics in each of them that make like these different personalities that are all like needed in society. And so it was interesting to see how the book mentioned like that you know, that their houses were filled with, laughter, or like supportive, or like how their characteristics were not only able to build a home, but like a society and an ummah, and lead as an example for us learning about them now, and how all of these characteristics allowed them to build a legacy for themselves. And that's what I really liked in the first chapter, like focusing on what makes you unique. And that was actually, about Soda, like how she didn't compare herself to others. She's focusing on what makes her different and how she can build a legacy for herself. And so, really, just, yeah, I really like this book so far. So, thanks.
Beautiful points, Jalila. I'm gonna need to, yeah, snaps. Does anybody else wanna share anything? Okay. Um, one thing I wanted to say based off of what you guys said was I loved how Mispa you said that ambition can be your or like it can show up in whatever way you decide it to be. So it could be if you want to stay at home, it could be in the form of pursuing multiple degrees, or it could be anything. And I love that because, like you also said, culturally, we're at a time where a lot of people, this is why it's so important, by the way, to learn about these women, because culture can very easily mix with religion, and especially as a woman, um, and gender roles, and being told what Islamically you can and can't be. I'm gonna be honest, like reading a lot of this, I've never been told, like, or have never felt like that was endorsed to me as a Muslim woman, to try and be these things and to try and encompass these characteristics. I've never heard be ambitious. Like, I don't know if that's because of my culture or what it is, but I've never heard that. And I also want to agree with Misbah on that point. It's so, so important to really encompass that characteristic, because it can show up in so many different ways. And I love that it's so dynamic. Like it can be so many different things based off of what you want and what obviously first and foremost what Allah pleases. But yeah, I just thought that was so beautiful. And yeah, like period on everything Jalila said, because I agree with that too. Um, boom. Now we're going to talk about the quotes. My first quote that really stood out to me when I was reading this book is, each woman raises the other, seizing every opportunity bestowed by Allah to reach the next level of Jannah. I speechless, but I just love this. I love the phrasing of seizing every opportunity bestowed by Allah, because it really reinforces the idea of ambition within every one of these women. And also what their ultimate end goal was, which was Jannah. And I love that we know this while simultaneously also knowing that these women were educated and had a personality and were so many different dynamic things, and that was their ultimate priority. The next quote is, they are diverse, yet their roots are the same: consciousness of Allah, unwavering obedience to Him, and their commitment to benefit their communities with the blessings upon them. The next quote was, I sincerely hope this book will remind you how far and wide the ripple effects of your good deeds will travel, enveloping and pushing forward that nation of your inheritance. And then Khadija radiallahu anha, in her chapter, it was quoted, her heart sought someone who possessed exceptional qualities beyond wealth and notability. And that stood out to me again because of cultural teachings, where honestly, it's not even, it is cultural, and it's also just, I don't know what the category for that would be, but it's something that I think that a lot of parents can kind of make, force upon women, I think, in the sense of like what they should be looking for. And I'm not saying any of those things are wrong, but the fact that Khadija radiallahu anha, she's this she's this incredible woman, okay? She has so many suitors coming after her. She is wealthy, she has a business, and her standard wasn't to find someone at the exact same level, yet even more wealthier than her and with an even greater social standing. Her want was to find someone who possessed exceptional qualities, which ended up being the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I feel like that is just such a great example of what you should be looking for, not just in a spouse, but also in friendship as well. Not just a social standing or what they seem to be on the outside, but who they are on the inside. More quotes from Khadija radiallahu anha's chapter was, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had exhibited exceptional business skills, and despite his modest financial status, she recognized in him a man worthy of her admiration and love. And that just ties back to the last quote. Another quote was, the best of the world's woman is Marium at her lifetime. Love my name. Really love my name. And the best of the world's women is Khadija at her lifetime. Another quote, and I'm going to try and zoom through these a little bit, because, and this was so hard, guys, because I didn't even put all of the ones I really liked, but here's Khadija coming to you with a dish of food or tumbler containing something in a drink. Convey to her a greeting from her Lord, and give her the glad tidings, and she will have a palace in paradise built of qasab, wherein there will be neither any noise nor any fatigue. And this is Allah's words to Khadija radiallahu anha, a message from him to her. When he needed her the most, she was there for him with all her heart, faith, and strength. At the moment, she was not just his wife, but also a friend and somebody he could lean on, which are valuable qualities needed to build a nation. And then lastly, there were two types of people that played a fundamental role in the dissemination of Islam at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One, those who were at the forefront, who fought battles alongside him sallallahu alaihi wasallam to establish the truth and endured extreme hardships in the path of Islam. And two, those who stayed in the background, transforming lives with their subtle pressure yet strong character, and who became pillars of support, sources of comfort, and a means of strength to continue striving in the path of Allah. Okay, before I continue onto the questions portion, um, or like the discussion questions, does anybody have any thoughts or anything they want to contribute after listening to the quotes? No, why?
I was gonna say, I remember, like, I don't know if any of you guys are from Houston or like living in Houston right now. So I remember I went to like the Sopa Institute and there's like a talk over like the women leaders in Islam. And I feel like just like the thought like that came up to me was like, I feel like everyone's always like kind of quoting or talking about more so the male version of things or just like Sahabi stories. And so I feel like it's different. Like I kind of like this book that, or at least so far I liked it, where like it talks more about like the women leaders. And so I think like it's really like nice how like there's a lot more maybe I guess vocal or like more like not vocality but like I guess coverage over like the women leaders now versus before. I feel like it was not like as a thing. So I think it's kind of nice like when you learn about like the women leaders, like there are certain like stereotypes because of like culture. Like you mentioned before, like culture gets mixed in with religion a lot. So I feel like when you kind of learn about the women leaders, you kind of learn about all their different traits. And so I think that like all these quotes kind of reminded me of that like discussion or conversation we had like when like I went to SOPA where it's like a really big thing and it's really important to kind of talk about like the female side of Islam and not necessarily just like the male version of things, even though that's important too, because sometimes like even men have to kind of learn how to be like our beloved prophet as well. So
Thank you. That was beautifully said. I'm like gonna call on you all the time now. And then Enam, do you have anything that you want to share or that like stood out to you? Um, yeah, it could literally be one thing.
So I also did go around highlighting a lot of the quotes I liked, which was like almost like entire pages. But I think the main thing I was trying to focus on was also like highlighting a lot of their traits to try to see if we could try to like inspire ourselves to try to be like that. And I'll share like I think three things that I saw. And so when they talked about how the stories of the treasured, noble, and valuable women were not just inspirational, but that they serve as a blueprint for our ummah. I thought that was pretty good. That each woman featured was to serve as our role model in education, motherhood, and practicing our faith. And then one of the other quotes about Aisha radiallahu anha was about how when if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a blessing from us or keeps us from something that our heart yearns for, we have to have strong faith that he'll give us something so much better in return, which I think is something that we can definitely come back to every day whenever we have to be like resilient about anything.
Love that. Okay, Miss Bed, did you want to add anything before I continue?
Um, I just really enjoy all the quotes in this book. Honestly, Alhamdulillah, like I feel like it's really eye-opening. And I really like what Anam said about highlighting traits because one thing I really noticed was that I want to embody the traits of all these amazing women, inshallah, because I think it's just so important that we get more knowledge about them. Um, I just feel like, again, yeah, there hasn't really been much, like, obviously there has been a lot said about them, but I think like deep diving into who they really are, their traits and stuff is just such a great thing, especially for like young Muslim women to see, because it can really help us in the future. It can help us see what marriage should look like. It can help us see what we should try to be doing in order to, please Allah. So I just think that all the quotes really lead us to that. And just see what you guys have to say as well. So the first question that we have is, despite her wealth and status, Khadija radhiyallahu anha chose to marry the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he had no money. What does this decision reveal about her values and priorities? Does anyone want to go first, or should I call on someone? What do you guys prefer?
I'm done.
No, I'm being serious.
I'm in high school again.
No, you can go first.
okay. So sorry, let me like read the question. Um trying to think. So I can answer the question like in any way that I
Yeah,
want.
any way you want. Like, what do you think about it?
Okay, yeah. So I feel like I'm trying to think. Like, you know, again, there's so many different interpretations of like everything all the time, right? I guess like one interpretation is how like when it comes to marriage, it's kind of that thing where I guess like the most popular I think interpretation is like the man is typically responsible, right, for finances and everything. So I feel like we have an example here that kind of like contradicts that, but I think it's more so about she maybe looked at more of his character and just like who he was as a person versus necessarily like the money. And I think like kind of like looking at this like example in like Islamic history and in a way it kind of shows you that there are so many different ways of life. It's not necessarily just like so like strict. And I feel like at least when I was growing up as a kid, like I think there was just like one right way to live life, and now nowadays there is, mashallah, so many differences of opinion, so many different school of thought, so many different rooms of interpretation that like in a way like you can kind of learn that like there's not exactly one like right way, I guess, of life. And I think you can kind of learn that from her like example too. So
Love that. I think like you're literally spot on. I feel like in this day and age, alhamdulillah, like we have so many ways to like live our lives, especially when it comes to choosing our spouses or choosing, our friends. So I feel like, when we see like this example, it can be so great for us to realize that, you know, what like I guess like look at not just like their wealth or not just how much they make in a year, not how well they can support you financially, but how well they can support you like spiritually as well. I feel like that's a really big factor that a lot of people forget.
Okay, let me see. What are my thoughts on this? Yeah, no, you guys pretty much covered it. Very solid. Um, I also like I agree the importance of having someone that can support you, but I also just love how because we know who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is and the qualities he had, that if if you had to choose between like if you're it's all about like your priorities, I guess, when like faced with a decision like that, and also just searching for qualities and things that were manifested in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I pretty much agree with everything you guys said as well. I also think that another way we can interpret this is realizing that Khadija radiallahu anha, her heart wasn't tied to the dunya, subhanallah, before even Islam was like introduced, because if she cared so little about wealth, then that I just feel like that's foreshadowing Islam and what she's inevitably gonna accept um in her life. And so I love that because it just shows that not just regarding a spouse, but in general, like don't value things of this dunya over things that are everlasting, like your character and the stuff that Allah values and what you'll take, inshallah, one day to Jannah with you. If anybody else wants to speak now about this question, please. But if not, we can continue. Okay. And sorry, Miss, but you can continue.
Okay, so the second question we have is what modern parallels can we draw between Khadija radiallahu anha's leadership, resilience, and contributions to Islam, oops, and the role of women in leadership today? And does anyone want to go first? Amna, would you like to go?
yeah, I can go. Wait, sorry, let me reread the
Yeah.
question. Okay, so I'm trying to think. I guess like when we like okay, sorry, I'm gonna keep using like examples of like what I heard like at like the masjid or something too. So I don't know if you guys like listen to like Al Shukri with Al Maghrib Institute. Um Sheikh. Okay. So like he talked about how like I think like 40% of women are actually outperforming men in like the career field. So like, that's an example of how like she was making more than our beloved prophet. So like in today's times too, it's like women are doing pretty well like in the career space. I think in terms of like roles and leadership, definitely a lot more like women are in leadership nowadays than maybe before. I think another thing too is like nowadays it's a lot more accepted. Like if you never like want to get married or like if you just want to be like strong and independent, you can like do that versus I think before there was a little bit more of a push up like you have to get married, you have to have a husband. And so I think like times have changed in that like manner way that like it's okay if like you like never get married. I think before it was a lot more like you have to kind of complete like your dean by getting married, but I feel like that like narrative or mentality has slowly like gone into like more of a like, oh, it's kind of your choice, or it's like, oh, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't bring the right person in your life, it's okay to just be like single and independent. And I think there's not as much of a reliance now on like a man versus like before. I think that was like a thing that like you have to get married. But yeah, I think that's like what I kind of see like between like modern parallels and then like back then too. So
Oh, and Fizza said, I agree with Amna. Her role also laid a foundation for what leadership could and should look like. And I think you guys are both, again, spot on. Mashallah, like what we see from Khadija radiallahu anha, we see that she was a leader not just in the way she supported the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also the way she was so faithful regardless of not necessarily okay, like I kind of just want to put it into this perspective. A lot of us, me, I know for me especially, sometimes we have struggles with like tawakkul and just, putting our absolute trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we think about it from Khadija's perspective, Allahumma barik, she put her absolute faith and trust to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala simply because he said so. And so I feel like that's such a great example of leadership in her because like imagine, not just having like your husband to go off of um and just putting your steadfast faith belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like that is just something that I think is so inspiring and so admirable because Allahumma barak again, like it's just something so crazy to me, especially as so like it helps me realize that like I it just helps me put my full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he always has a plan for everything. And I feel like her leadership is just amazing, not just in the way she supported the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but just her as a mother, as a woman, as an example for all of us. So it's the case. What about you, Mariam Azim?
Um, Great question. What about me? I'm kidding. I've like touched base on this already, but the fact that Khadija radiallahu anha had or was leading her own business and she was a businesswoman, the fact that she was wealthy and she was in a position of leadership, which are things that I personally admire and strive to be, really resonated with me because it shows me what I can be and that I could have the love and acceptance of Allah with those things. And also, I would say, like, I've come across so many, like, Allahumma barik Islamic, um, like, businesses led by women now, whether it be abaya brands or hijab brands or even like counseling and like self-help initiatives, and they're all female like driven and marketed and executed, and it's so amazing, like subhanallah, what we can be and how like some of us don't even realize how we are encompassing the traits of Khadija radiallahu anha.
Oh, I love this question. So Sauda radiallahu anha famously said that wealth is not found in having many possessions, but rather true wealth is feeling sufficiently in the soul. How does this perspective contrast with today's materialistic world? And I feel like this is like a really great question, especially just, with like the rise of like overconsumption and like consumerism in like the world and in this dunya right now. So I feel like it can be really great for us to like reflect on like what we have rather than what we should be doing. So,
Seems like you made this question for me, Misfa.
how did you
Were
know that?
you attacking?
No, it was attacking myself.
Kidding, kidding. Okay.
Mariam, it seems like you want to go first.
Yes, I will go first. Um, well, okay. Well, I think that we are, I mean, quite obviously living in a very materialistic and consumeristic world at the moment. And I love that it's Ramadan because this question hits so much more. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was saying how she was minimalizing her consumption during Ramadan specifically. And I love the way she explained it in the sense of like the previous Ramadan, she would go to Sahur Fest and like all these different Ramadan events that like not in a judgmental way at all, but in the sense of or the perspective of these events are like based off of getting food, getting as much food as possible and socializing and there's not much da'wah in a setting like that and you can really easily become immersed in overconsumption. Like personally, I know how I would feel if I'm like surrounded by like seven food trucks that I like really want and then I'm just like, becoming a big back and like eating all these things when in reality Ramadan is the opposite of that. It's about minimalizing that consumption and we can kind of see that like capitalist mindset and a lot of things really like anywhere you go if we're on a social media app there's going to be an ad telling you you need this abaya, you need this hijab, you need this makeup product to look like this or to be this or that and it never ends like the items never end and the fact that it's so prevalent and so much of our social media which is like one of the greatest influences to people because it reaches so many people and people are consuming it constantly it just shows what a lot of people are valuing and then also us as a consumer how we feel that in order to be content or in order to be something that we need certain products and even during Ramadan, like the need to like constantly like purchase things or to constantly like eat this or like to constantly go out and like eat this or that. I just feel like something that isolation for me personally has allowed me to realize is that I don't need those things to feel like a sufficient and good person and happy and content. It's more of what is constantly being fed to me and the opportunities that are constantly being created that kind of make that like capitalistic culture thrive and then also want like make us kind of addicted to consuming in excess. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
I really like that, Miriam. That was really good. Um, Sorry, I had to type mine out because I think this is like a huge thing to think about. I also think social media has a huge role in this by creating a culture where self-worth is tied to who you are basically or what you own than who you are And I do feel like a victim to this, especially like previous Ramazans, especially when it comes to like Zuhur Fest or like what abaya I'm gonna wear, like how I'm gonna look and stuff like that. And yeah, I think one thing that's really like stood out to me is like I don't know if y'all seen this TikTok trend, but it's like there's videos of like where people comment this person is rich, but it's like a video of their friends or like how they put themselves out there, whether it's like wearing the hijab or like being able to pray like 5 times a day and like stuff like that. And I think that really is like eye opening. And one thing I searched this up, but it's like a quote: "A person who feels content with what they have, regardless of their status, is richer than someone who is endlessly chasing more at the end of the day." And I think that is pretty deep. But yeah, that's my intake on that.
Facts, no printer.
Should I go?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I don't know if I mentioned this, but I've only been wearing the hijab for like about a year now. Because I went for Umrah, and so like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed my heart about it. So it's been like a journey, right? Just figuring out like what to wear and all that stuff. But I was gonna mention because you guys like talked about like yeah, how like social media definitely plays a big part in just like clothing, right? Like so many options, all these different things. To where like when I think back to just like the experience at the Kaaba for Umrah, it is like different, right? Where like you're literally just wearing like an abaya and you're doing the tawaf and all those things. So it's kind of like when you come back here, it's a little bit like it's so much of a fashion thing where sometimes I feel like I kind of like, it's so simple. Like when you're there at the Kaaba, it's just literally you're wearing the hijab, like it could be anything, and then like an abaya, and then like you're doing tawaf, and like that's it. To where I feel like in a way, like living here in the US, it's so hard, right? Because we have that consumerism culture, it's capitalistic, to where like I think like at the end of the day, no matter how you look, it doesn't really matter because like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you for who you are, not necessarily like how many things you have or anything like that. But it's hard not to kind of get influenced, right? By like not necessarily just social media, but just like other people in general. Like I think like being a part or being surrounding yourself with like supportive people who just like don't really care about maybe like material goods is also like another thing where like I think the company you keep definitely plays a big part too, where like naturally you're gonna be influenced by your friends. So if your friends are not like a good influence, right, you're gonna be influenced by that. So yeah.
I think everything you guys said was amazing. And I definitely agree 1000%. Can't even add anything because you guys said it all. Does anyone
I
else
well.
feel? Oh, sorry, we're gonna cut you off.
Oh no, I was just saying I agree as well. When she said that, it or was that Amna? I can't see who's speaking because my screen is shared, so I don't know who said that. But whoever spoke previously, I agree with them, especially the part where she said that it's difficult in the US because I kind of felt myself falling victim to this, especially with dear old Bella, even though I love them. But like I remember there was this like phase of my life where I was just buying so much just because I felt like not even because everyone else was doing it, but I think unconsciously that was the reason why, sort of, or like I just felt like I needed these things in order to be like more confident and in order to feel good about myself. And I remember I reached a point where like things would keep dropping and oh my god, this feels like a Bella therapy group. Like things would keep dropping and then I would be like I just lost the need to constantly purchase even though everyone around me was kind of like waiting for the next drop. And again, that's not in any sort of judgmental way towards them, but more so for myself. I liked knowing or like I like that feeling of contentment I had in my heart to know that adding this piece of clothing or this trendy item that all the influencers on Instagram or all the TikTok famous people are wearing isn't going to add value to me as a person or my happiness. It's just another piece of clutter kind of within my life and within my closet. And I think simplicity is so underrated, especially because like I don't know, like I've been doing little like clean outs and stuff, especially with my hijabs and just clothes. And the regret you feel when you see everything that you end up not wearing or using just because it was an impulse buy or because you were influenced by people on the internet is just so much shame, because that money could have been used way, way, way more meaningfully, like to donate or to give to another person. And yeah, I think that this also just makes me realize that if I'm gonna spend money, and if Alhamdulillah I have any sort of wealth, whether that be like $5 in my bank account, then before I think to spend on a materialistic item, I should think about something that could forever help my akhirah, like donating, even if it's $1, or just doing something more meaningful for another person than trying to just like fill my life with a bunch of clothing pieces or whatever I'm looking for at the moment. Thank you. So, um, this is for both the Dallas and Houston branch. If you want to follow us on Instagram, if you don't already, it's at Deen Circle. Our TikTok is at Deen Circle. If you're looking for a podcast, we have one on Spotify and it's called With Love Marium. And I just talk about all things Islam and self-help. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm gonna post inshallah the PowerPoint and everything. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Also, Amna, I get my abayas. Sorry, wanted to answer your question. I get my abayas from like few different places. I think Hayat Fashion by World Food has abayas. They're a bit pricey, but I feel like it's really hard to find an abaya that's not pricey anymore. But I also kind of like shopping on AliExpress. But I have to do it like a month in advance. I have to like place the order, but they have like a lot of nice abayas that aren't super expensive. Um, that's like what's helped me.
I I found these random like Instagram abaya ads, and they were like, I'm telling you, I'm such a problem. But they were actually like not, they were pretty affordable, not affordable, okay, but I mean in this current economy, like affordable relative to like veiled, I would say, or like something crazy. Yeah, you should try, or I'm gonna try and find them. Just text me on WhatsApp, or not WhatsApp. That's really ghetto. My number should be on there. Just text me. And then like remind me, and I'm gonna try and find the specific ones that I use. But I have a few websites I use. They're just not the cheapest options, but like I've had them for years and years and have been wearing them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like I put this in the chat just now. So there's like I don't know for like other clothing, I found this like other website that I thought like not necessarily for abayas, but like for like just other clothing. It's like Fashion Focus. It's a European website. I recommend it because like everything comes like in a week.
Oh, no way. It's called Fat. What's it called? Sorry.
Fashion Focus. Yeah, I wrote it out. I just thought I would like throw the recommendation, but like I don't think they have like that many abayas on there, but like for Ramadan, I kind of wanted like more like abayas, right, to go to the market and stuff. So I was like, oh, maybe you guys have like good recs. So
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I'm gonna check that out. European is definitely my style. Um Okay guys, I'm getting really delirious. So
Thank you
we could
guys so much for everything today.
yeah.
Inshallah, I'll see you next Saturday.
Assalamu alaikum.
Allah
فتلك مظاهر